It's never too late to master your emotions. You ever have one of those moments where you're just driving along, maybe stuck in traffic, and something small, some tiny little thing, sets you off? Could be the guy in front of you taking forever to turn, or the radio playing that one song you can't stand. And before you know it, you're gripping the wheel a little tighter, your jaws clenched, and you're muttering under your breath like the world's out to get you. I had one of those moments not too long ago. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon, and I was on my way home from a long day. The kind of day where everything feels like it's piling up, work, bills, that nagging feeling you're forgetting something important. I was sitting at a red light, staring at the bumper of the car in front of me, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my sister asking if I could help her move some furniture over the weekend. And for some reason, that text, that perfectly reasonable request, felt like the last straw. I didn't yell or throw the phone or anything dramatic like that, but inside, I was boiling. I could feel this wave of frustration, like, why is everyone always asking me for something? Can't I just have a minute to myself? Looking back, it's kind of embarrassing how worked up I got over a text. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's never really about the text, or the traffic, or the song on the radio. It's about what's already simmering under the surface. That moment at the red light stuck with me, not because it was some big life-changing event, but because it made me realize how often I let these little sparks turn into full-blown fires. I started thinking about how much energy I was spending on stuff that, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter. And I wondered, how do people do it? You know, those folks who seem to glide through life, calm as a lake on a windless day, no matter what gets thrown at them. I wasn't like that. I wanted to be, but I wasn't. For a long time, I thought that's just who I was. I'm in my late 40s now, and I figured, well, this is it. This is the package. I'm the guy who gets annoyed too easily, who snaps at people I love when I'm stressed, who carries around this low hum of irritation like it's part of my DNA. I'd see people younger than me, colleagues, friends, even strangers, who seemed to have this mastery over their emotions. They'd handle a rude cashier or a missed deadline with this quiet confidence, like they knew something I didn't. And I'd think, man, I missed the memo on that one. Like there was some class on staying cool that I skipped back in high school. But here's the thing that started to nag at me. If I kept going like this, what would my life look like in 10 years? In 20? Would I still be the guy fuming at red lights, letting every little thing knock me off balance? That thought scared me a little. Not in a dramatic movie montage kind of way, but in a quiet, heavy way. Like I was staring down a road I didn't want to walk. I didn't want to be that person. The one who's always reacting, always a little on edge, always letting the world decide how I feel. But I also didn't know where to start. I mean, you don't just wake up one day and decide, cool, I'm going to be Zen now. It's not like flipping a switch. What made it harder was that I'd tried stuff before. You know how it goes. You read a self-help book, or you download one of those meditation apps, and for a week or two, you're all in. You're breathing deeply, you're counting to 10, you're telling yourself, I'm in control. But then life happens. The app gets buried under a dozen other notifications, the book ends up on a shelf, and you're back to square one, snapping at your spouse because they left dishes in the sink. I'd been through that cycle enough times to feel like maybe I was just stuck. Like maybe I'd missed my window to figure this out. You ever feel that way? Like you're too far down the line to change something big about yourself? But then, a couple of months after that red light moment, something shifted. It wasn't some grand revelation, no lightning bolts or choirs of angels. It was just a conversation. I was at a buddy's house, sitting on his back porch, nursing a beer while the sun dipped below the trees. My friend Tom, he's one of those guys who's always been steady. Not perfect, not a saint, but the kind of person who doesn't let the small stuff get to him. We were talking about nothing in particular. Work, kids, the usual. When I mentioned that text from my sister and how it set me off, I laughed it off like, "Man, I'm such a mess sometimes." But Tom didn't laugh. He just looked at me, took a sip of his beer, and said, "You know, it's not about the text. It's about what you're carrying around before it even comes." That hit me. Not because it was some profound wisdom I'd never heard before, but because it was so simple. And because Tom wasn't judging me. He wasn't telling me to just relax or throwing out some generic advice. He was just pointing out the obvious in a way that made me see it differently. I started talking more, spilling my guts about how I felt like I was always on edge, how I wished I could be one of those people who didn't sweat the small stuff. And Tom, he just listened. Didn't try to fix me, didn't offer a TED talk. He just nodded and said, "You ever think about what's behind all that? Like, what's really driving it?" I didn't have an answer then, but that question stuck with me. It was like a pebble in my shoe, annoying me just enough to keep me thinking about it. What was driving it? Why did I get so worked up over things that deep down, I knew weren't worth it? I started paying attention to myself in a way I hadn't before. Not in a self-obsessed way, but like I was watching a movie of my own life, trying to figure out the main character. And what I noticed was this. Most of the time, when I got angry or frustrated, it wasn't about what was happening right then. It was about something deeper, something older. Like I was carrying around this backpack full of old grudges, regrets, and fears, and every little annoyance was just another rock getting tossed in. That realization didn't fix everything overnight. I didn't suddenly become the Dalai Lama, but it was a start. It was like I'd found the edge of a map I didn't even know I was holding. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to wonder, maybe I wasn't stuck. Maybe I could learn to carry that backpack a little lighter. Maybe it wasn't too late to get a handle on this, to master my emotions in a way that felt real, not forced. But how? That's what I kept coming back to. How do you even begin to untangle something that feels so woven into who you are? And that's where things got interesting. You know how sometimes life hands you a moment that feels like it was custom-made to answer a question you didn't even know you were asking? That's what happened to me a few weeks after that porch conversation with Tom. I was at a bookstore, killing time before a meeting, just wandering the aisles. I wasn't looking for anything specific, but I ended up in the self-help section, probably because I was still chewing on that question about what was driving my reactions. I picked up this random book, not expecting much. The cover was kind of cheesy, honestly, but something about the title caught my eye. The Space Between. I flipped it open, and the first line I read was, "Your emotions aren't you. They're just visitors. You decide how long they stay." I stood there in the aisle, reading that sentence over and over, and it was like someone had turned on a light in a room I'd been stumbling around in for years. It wasn't some earth-shattering philosophy. It was just true. I'd always thought of my emotions as this fixed part of me, like my height or my eye color. If I got angry, that's just who I was. If I felt overwhelmed, that's just how I was wired. But this idea that my emotions were separate, that I could choose how to respond to them, it was like a door cracking open. I bought the book, took it home, and started reading. And yeah, some of it was a little fluffy, but there was this one exercise that stuck with me. It was simple. When you feel something strong, anger, frustration, whatever, pause for 5 seconds. Just 5. Don't react, don't say anything, don't even think. Just breathe and count.
I started trying it, not religiously, not like I was following a rule book, but just experimenting. The first time I really noticed it working was at work. My boss had this habit of dropping last-minute projects on my desk, and it drove me up the wall. One day he did it again, walked by, tossed a folder on my desk and said, "Need this by tomorrow, thanks." I could feel that familiar heat rising, that urge to snap back or at least grumble under my breath. But instead I paused. I counted to 5, slow in my head. And in those 5 seconds something shifted. The anger was still there, but it wasn't running the show. I could see it for what it was, just a feeling, not a command. I nodded, said, "Got it," and went back to work. Didn't feel great, but it didn't ruin my day either. That was the first time I realized I could choose. Not just in that moment, but in all the moments that came after. The more I practiced that pause, the more I started to see patterns. Like how my frustration at work was tied to this deeper fear of not being good enough, or how my annoyance with my sister's text was really about feeling stretched too thin, like I had to be everything for everyone. It wasn't like I sat down and psychoanalyzed myself. It was more like I was slowly pulling threads, unraveling this knot I'd been carrying around for years. And here's the thing. It wasn't about becoming someone else. It wasn't about turning into some emotionless robot or pretending I was above it all. It was about giving myself a little space, a tiny gap between what I felt and what I did with it. That space was where the magic happened. It was where I could decide to let the anger pass, to laugh instead of snap, to listen instead of argue. And the more I did it, the easier it got. Not easy, but easier. Like a muscle I didn't know I had, getting stronger with every rep. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out. I still have days where I'm short-tempered, where I let the small stuff get to me. But those days are fewer now, and when they happen, I don't beat myself up about it. I just pause, count to 5, and start again. What I've learned is that mastering your emotions isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up for yourself over and over in the middle of the mess. It's about realizing that no matter how old you are or how set in your ways you feel, there's still room to grow. There's still time to choose a different way. You know what's funny? I used to think people like Tom, the ones who seem so calm and in control, were just born that way, like they got dealt a better hand. But now I think it's not about the hand you're dealt, it's about how you play it. And the best part? You can always learn to play a little better. It's never too late to start.